Vamos a entrar con el último panel antes de comer y vamos a hablar de Smart Apparel, de tecnología vestible, dispositivos y tejidos inteligentes. Y para dirigir este panel quiero, por favor, que le deis la bienvenida a Joanna Berzowska, directora de Textiles, Electrónicos de OM Signal. Joanna, por favor, un aplauso para ella. Bienvenida.
Muchas gracias a todos y muy amables por su atención, y el resto será en inglés. Marcelo Cabral was saying this morning that this is a region that is undergoing phenomenal growth and change and ready to embrace the social, technological challenges of our time, as well as the emerging challenges of our future. So one such challenge deals with our personal health and well-being. I think it's something that might be the primary concern on all of our minds. And this is a challenge which is increasingly being addressed through wearable and mobile technology solutions. So this panel will discuss the potential of wearable, portable, and mobile technologies to innovate in the areas of health and well-being in order to address problems with obesity, for example, help people with chronic conditions, facilitate remote care, improve sports and fitness performance, but also contribute to the general physical and emotional well-being of the population. So I see that I'm the first speaker, because these are my slides. But I will now introduce the second speaker. So Amy, could you come on stage? So the second speaker is going to be Amy Puliafito, whom you've met earlier from Misfits Technologies. She's the communication, yes, yay! She's the communications lead at Misfits, where she leads Misfits content, messaging, and media relations. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the really extensive coverage that The Shine and the company has received, everything from the New York Times to all the top publications in the US and internationally. Prior to her work at Misfits, she was in charge of marketing, research, and communication at Rock Health, which was the first seed fund for health technology startups, where she did amazing work. Prior to that, she also worked for Keck School for Medicine at USC, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School for Public Health, as well as having a BA in sociology from Northwestern, where she studied the use of digital communication technologies in public health interventions. Oh, and I see we now have Amy's presentation. So Amy will go first after all, and I will speak second.
Thank you so much, Joanna. It's great to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about wearables, where we are, where we're going, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my company, Misfit. So the first question you're probably asking yourself is, how did a company come to be named Misfit? Having a little trouble advancing my slides. There we go. And the company was actually founded October 5th, 2011, which was the day that Steve Jobs passed away. And on our board sits John Sculley, who many of you probably know is a former CEO of Apple, as well as Sridhar Iyengar, who's our CTO, and Sunny Vu, who is our CEO. Prior to Misfit, Sunny and Sridhar founded a company called Agamatrix, where they developed the IBG Star. The IBG Star is the first iPhone-enabled hardware medical device, and it's a blood glucose monitor. So they learned a lot of important lessons around product design and usability when they were at Agamatrix developing the IBG Star, which they then took and passed on to Misfit, although there are a couple important distinctions. Number one, this is an FDA-regulated device, and the first product of Misfit is not. So our first product is called the Shine. And the Shine is an elegant activity tracker that you can wear anywhere on your body. And one of the key differentiators with Shine is that its design is very distinctive. So how many of you in the audience wear an activity tracker? Okay, so a couple. There are three things that really make us different. The design, which incorporates the fact that it doesn't require any charging, It's waterproof to 50 meters, and it's wearable anywhere on your body. We designed it to look and feel more like a piece of jewelry, and that was very intentional, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So, like other wearables, Shine syncs with an app on your iPhone or Android device, and through the app, you can set goals, and the way you interact with the hardware is you actually double tap on the Shine, so you can see I'm wearing a Shine right now. You double tap on the Shine, and it shows your progress towards your daily activity goal, which you set on the app. It tracks multiple activities, including football, swimming, basketball, tennis. It tracks your light and deep sleep. It allows you to see your progress over time on the app, and it also allows you to compete with your friends. So you can connect with your friends on Facebook, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Weibo, lots of different platforms. So our vision for Shine was really to make it something that was infinitely customizable, that really could become sort of a fashion statement. So I come from a healthcare background, and one thing that I think a lot of us working in healthcare feel is that it's not very trendy. It's not always very fashionable. And so we wanted to make something that was fashionable and that was fun and that could be part of your daily sort of self-expression through fashion using lots of different accessories. So you can see we have a clasp, which can really go anywhere on your body, a sport band, leather bands, a necklace. The interesting thing with our necklace was we actually got the idea from it through our crowdfunding campaign, which we launched on Indiegogo. So that's another emerging technology all by itself, of course, crowdfunding. But we also, in addition to raising funds on it, we also got ideas for our product on it. So it was really an invaluable experience for the company. So we're very much a global company. We are available, our website, app, and retail package are available in multiple languages, so we're in 17 languages total. And we're available in many places across the globe. So that was, again, another very intentional thing and something that really was distinctive about our path to market. We're a global company, so we actually are in San Francisco. Our manufacturing is done in Seoul. We have a huge data science and software engineering team and operations team in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and we actually have a back-end software development team in China. So we're very much a global company operating across time zones. And that's really influenced our DNA as a company. So I think one of the first questions we have to ask ourselves is, what's so exciting about wearables after all? Everybody's talking about wearables, everybody's talking about them at CES. What's the big deal? So I think what's really exciting is the potential for wearables to offer continuous data and insights into our behavior and the behavior of large groups of people. That goes from everything from remote patient monitoring to doing real-time diagnostics to better understanding results in clinical trials. Then there's the really consumer aspect of it, which is motivating and incentivizing individuals to be more active. So in the United States, 50% of individuals suffer from one or more chronic diseases. A third of our population is obese, and 50% of people are not getting the daily recommended amount of exercise. So there's a huge chronic disease burden. It's growing, and we think that wearables have the potential to motivate, incentivize individuals to change this behavior. So this just sort of shows where we were in 2010 as far as different places across the globe. But the chronic disease burden is a huge cause of rising costs in healthcare, which affects all of us. So I think wearables also have the potential to make healthcare location agnostic, which is very interesting to me. Across, over an individual's lifetime, they see over 20 physicians. They move around a lot. We're very mobile. We're very attached to our smartphones. And our smartphones are frequently the only thing that are with us all the time. And so what we're starting to see is that making healthcare decisions only in a clinic is just not realistic at all, especially as we move from a disease-oriented model of healthcare to a health and well-being model of healthcare. And the other thing that's really exciting to me is the advent of rapid prototyping tools and increased funding opportunities for entrepreneurs in this space. So before I was with Misfits, I was with Rock Health. Rock Health funds and supports entrepreneurs innovating in healthcare technology, and that's just one source of seed funding for hardware entrepreneurs operating in the space. So it's much easier to have an idea and bring it to market quickly and have all sorts of resources to learn what the best way to do that is. And then, of course, there's the rapid decrease in cost of sensors, which means these are going to be everywhere. So in the past 5 years, the cost of the sensors that are in things like Shine have gone down dramatically, which means wearables are going to become a commodity that are available everywhere to a lot of different groups of people. So I thought it might be fun to quickly look at where we're coming from a wearables perspective. So this is actually an abacus that's a ring from the 17th century Qing dynasty in China. So as you can see, wearable technology started a very long time ago. This might be something you've also seen or you might be familiar with. It's the Lifeline button. There was a commercial that aired frequently in the United States where a woman says, "I've fallen and I can't get up." Turns out that this device has over 6 million users, and using this device can increase elderly person's chances of survival after a fall by up to 50%. So it's a very useful device, and it's a wearable. You wear it around your neck. And it's evolved over time. So people, at first it was just a button, and now it actually has a fall sensor in it. This is the WearComp 1. We have limited time, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but this is one of the first head-mounted devices developed by Stephen Mann in 1980. And this is a great resource if you guys are looking for a little bit more on history of wearables. So obviously, with these, convenience and functionality are key. Rapid proliferation of wearables of all forms is something that we're seeing. This is the Shine, obviously. And what we're seeing is that they can be worn anywhere on your body. So head-worn things like Google Glass, heart rate monitors, shirts. The wrist tends to be a very common place for wearables, but what we at Misfit think is that the wrist is just one location that you can wear your device. So I hear a lot from people like, wearables are everywhere, like, what more can we do? And the truth is we're really just at the beginning. So in the US, we're really at just 1 to 2% of market penetration. In 2013, we had about $230 million of venture funding for biosensing wearables alone, which is about 5x what it was in 2011. So this is a really fast-growing space, and as you can see, we're really just at the beginning. So our current thinking is really focused around making something cheap, thinking about what technology can currently do. But going forward, I think we need to think a little bit more about what people actually need and what people are actually going to do. So for why we're so excited is that we really believe that sensors can provide unprecedented data and insights now that we have mobile internet. And what we really need to do in order to ensure that we get good data and a lot of data is we need to make sensing ambient. And for wearables, what this means is make it truly, truly wearable, which means wearing something all the time for a long time and by a lot of people. So in order to ensure that we get the data that we want, people actually need to use your device, which, believe it or not, is pretty difficult. So when we were thinking about what are people actually going to use, we had to ask ourselves, what does that mean? What is something critical that we use every day? And we came to come upon B.J. Fogg's behavior model, which basically says the things that we're most likely to use all the time are the things that we're actually going to be willing to get in our car and turn around and drive back for if we forget them at home. And that's our vision for something that's going to be really essential and really wearable going forward. We also thought about, why do people wear things in the first place? So aesthetics and fashion, as it turns out, is very important. And we came a little bit later to the market than other wearables. And we were able to talk to people who used different activity trackers. What we found out were things like aesthetics actually mattered. So when people had to wear something to the office and their wearable didn't look good with their suit, they took it off, which again was lost data. Or they were afraid that it was going to break, so they took it off when they went swimming. And all these sorts of user experience components are very important, and it informed our thinking when we decided to make it look like jewelry, make it not require any charging, and make it really, really comfortable. So comparing where we were, where we are, to where we're going, we're moving away from things that are plastic, bulky, require a lot of charging, and have limited use cases, and moving towards things that are really comfortable, integrate well with what we wear every day, whether or not we're an athlete, and that are useful across different functions, not just for high-performance athletes. So comparing our current thinking to sort of the 2.0 thinking, we are thinking about what people actually need, what people are actually going to find comfortable and fashionable, and we're going to design for manufacturing from the beginning. just again, expanding upon this vision a little bit more. So this is Shine. I hope you'll come talk to me afterwards and we can get to know each other a little bit better. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll let you step up next. Thanks.
So the format is that I will now talk about our product at Signal, as well as our vision for the future, and we should have about 10-15 minutes at the end to have a conversation and to discuss some questions that we both might find interesting for the future of wearables. So I have 2 jobs in my life, well, 3 if you count my children, but I have 2 jobs in my professional life, where one is at Signal, which is a startup company out of Montreal that I'll focus on today. But I'm also a professor at Concordia University in Montreal, and I run a research lab called XS Labs, which allows me to do experiments that are much more playful and much more esoteric than what I do in my startup life. And as you might have seen from the first slide, I am interested in clothing. And the Signal product is in fact a shirt. And I think that textiles are one of the most important future avenues for the exploration of body-worn sensing and electronics. This is a quote that, you know, it's a very obvious quote, but it basically lays out why clothing is important. It's been something that's evolved with us from the very beginning of our evolution, and it performs a whole bunch of functions, from social to cultural, etc. Now, once we start putting electronics into clothing, we have a whole world of possibilities that obviously center around more urgent questions like health and performance, but really can also reach into other areas. So these crazy images I'm showing you now are actually experiments that I do in my research lab at the university. And this is the clothing of 2040, okay? So a long time in the future, and these things move and change shape, and I put nitinol shape memory alloys into them. But, and I do a lot of art and performance, but the underlying research question, and again, this is my university work at XS Labs, is how can we make textiles smarter? How can we move from this traditional model, as Amy mentioned, of putting electronics in a plastic casing and actually invent the electronics of the future? So you'll see the way that I am addressing that problem is by developing functional fibers that can replace some of the traditional electronic components. And we already work with commercially available functional fibers. So the examples you see on the right here are different conductive fibers that have a range of electromechanical properties that are being used now to actually develop this Signal shirt, which is essentially a textile-based printed circuit board, but it's all made out of textile with different kinds of conductive yarns integrated directly into the fabric to create the sensors. And I'll show you a quick video about the company. It's a Montreal startup. We launched the pre-sales for our product about a month and a half ago, and if they're not shipping now, they'll be shipping either tomorrow or the day after. So I'm here at a very exciting time for the company. And this is the concept video. If I could have the sound, please, that we developed.
What if life became a little smarter simply by putting on a shirt? What if being connected meant really being in touch? What if what we wore helped us get through life a bit more smoothly? Or be healthier, fitter, Imagine if our clothes helped us take better care of our loved ones. Or on demand provided that crucial medical information. Or maybe brought us together in magical moments we simply could not have before. Well, Signal is making it possible.
So, you know, this is our wonderful vision. Our current initial product focuses a lot more on fitness, but the underlying question is really to move away from these wearable electronics that, again, as Amy mentioned, the most ubiquitous format that we've all encountered has been a wrist-worn format. And we're really targeting this full-body worn interface. And there's many very difficult things about textiles, but there's many wonderful things about textiles. So one of them is that it actually allows us to read all of the biosignals at the source, meaning on the skin, directly close to the heart in the breathing. This shirt right now detects a full ECG or EKG, so it's not just heart rate, it's actually a full medical grade, although it's not medically certified, but it's the same quality of signal, as well as a very sensitive breathing sensor, okay? What this allows us to do is not just look at heart rate, which is important information, but we look at what's called HRV, heart rate variability, and that together with the other sensors that we have in the Bluetooth transmitter that you see on the side, allow us to actually build quite complex models around your health, stress, well-being. So the company does a whole bunch of stuff. I'll just point to the last paragraph there where we look at human pattern modeling, pattern detection, predictive analytics, and certainly a large element of machine learning in order to build a very rich experience and a very rich product. Applications, of course, as I mentioned, you see the one in the center, that's the kind of early adopters. That is what we're targeting with our first version of our product, but our long-term vision is really to permeate health, wellness, quantified self, more specific medical applications around chronic conditions, as well as remote care. So again, just a few pictures from our initial product. We track, we assess, detect, and predict. The first product focusing on fitness can both help you track your workouts, different kinds of activities in the gym, give you more active or passive feedback, breathe deeper, breathe slower, and then after you leave the gym, also help monitor your recovery, as well as help you with what you saw in the video, just around lessons from how breathing actually affects our well-being. And since I started working at the company, I'm just going to say, I no longer have insomnia, because I've learned that when I wake up at 4 in the morning, if I just breathe for 5 minutes, all that stress goes away. I recommend it to all of you. When next time you wake up at 4 in the morning, try breathing. It's amazing. It's like the magical remedy. As well as tracking a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So I mentioned already what's wonderful about textiles is that they're close to the body, so our signal is much richer. But it also allows us to do other things that are really textile-based. So these shirts, you know, this was a 2.5-year R&D process, which wasn't just the electronics, it was the shirt itself. So for those of you following the soccer, which is probably all of you, you probably came across a mention that the athletes are using compression wear after their games to help, anyway. So we have all kinds of quite complex compression technology designed into this shirt. And this is both to help you with your posture, to help you with circulation, but also to have the best possible comfort while maximizing comfort and maximizing signal quality. We also have a few other material technologies in the product, which are antimicrobial for odor control, moisture wicking to keep cool and dry, and obviously it's machine washable, but that should go without saying, otherwise we would not have a business model. And these shirts, as I already mentioned, are manufactured, a large part of the manufacturing is done in Montreal on existing machines. All of this to basically give you, this fantastic product that puts you in tune and command and progress and empowered, wonderful taglines. And this is all about you, but the truth is it's not only about you. Because what's amazing, once we really start deploying these shirts, we'll be able to actually develop even more complex knowledge about our health and well-being through crowdsourcing. Of course, keeping in mind all kinds of privacy, security, and safety of information. These are huge issues that we are looking at very seriously. But such amazing potential to actually help develop models and knowledge of health at a much broader scale. And this is evidenced by the fact that all of these companies and more, everybody from Amazon to Google, etc., is now entering this space of biosignal, biosensing. But I want to go back to the textile, okay? So, I mentioned at the very beginning that textiles are fantastic, but it's a huge challenge to actually manufacture a biosensing shirt. A lot of it comes from the fact that we have no existing large-scale manufacturing capabilities for electronic textiles. So, we have very well-developed garment manufacturing industry all over the world. We have a very well-developed consumer electronics manufacturing capabilities all over the world, but bringing those two together is incredibly difficult. And when we try to do this, we encounter reliability and scalability issues. So, our approach to develop these undershirts and leisure wear is to actually break up the problem into 3 time scales, So you see here in a graphic format, which may be easier to understand, where the first version really focuses on using conductive textiles and different kinds of conductive yarns and using existing textile manufacturing capabilities. For the second version of the shirt, in 2 years, we are developing manufacturing capabilities right now that will allow us to then use different kinds of additive manufacturing capabilities, such as fusing, overprinting, etc., to help make the finishing of the shirt easier, faster, more reliable, and more automated. And then what I'm going to talk about now is the third version, which is hopefully in 4 years and on, where in my research lab at the university, I'm actually developing the functional fibers that will replace more of the shirt and move even more of the electronics into the shirt. So again, this is version 1, using existing manufacturing with conductive yarns. Version 2, then adding different things like laying, laminating, fusing to automate the finishing aspects of the shirt. But the really exciting thing, version 3, is the active fiber solution that we're moving towards, moving more functionality into the fibers, developing advanced composite functional fibers to replace some of the current sensors and add additional sensors as well. So this is one of my collaborators. He's also from MIT, but he's a physicist, chemist, so his name is Maxime Skorobogati. And I collaborate with different material scientists and scientists from all domains to actually move functionality into the level of the fiber. And this is interesting because once we have fibers with these functionalities, we actually can scale it up a lot more easily. So this is, more of a hand-controlled weaving machine, and I just brought this quick video to show you how easily we could actually then use these functional fibers. You'll see once this starts moving, this textile magically appears to create to weave them into or knit them into textiles. And this is, again, what I've been doing in my research life. So this is some of my artwork, but these are sensors. These are capacitive sensors directly woven into a textile, where you'll see they actually detect the presence of people. These are examples of actually embedding color change yarns into textiles. So I put so much importance into these future fibers that will allow us to make these textiles more intelligent. I hate using that word, but it's a word that communicates very well what I'm talking about. So textiles that have more sensing capabilities, as well as more expressive capabilities that can change color to indicate something, perhaps. You know, so we get our feedback on our phone, but also perhaps on the textiles themselves. And this research project I've been doing with Maxime, basically, we've developed 3 kinds of fibers right now. So photonic bandgap fibers that can change color with the transmission of light under different circumstances. We've developed capacitive fibers as well as energy storage fibers. This is, you know, research in the laboratory. This is the kind of fundamental science research that will not enter any product for probably 10 years. But it's a very exciting future for our wearable technologies. So I just brought a couple of pictures of early experiments. The way that we produce these fibers right now is by rolling different kinds of polymers and then drawing them into a fiber format. So you really have these different polymers, again, with different properties and different possibilities that once they're drawn and pulled, start interacting at the nanoscale to create fibers that have very exciting potential. And just one last image of some of our energy storage experiments and some of the design work that we do around it. So basically, I want to challenge all of you as Mexico's innovators and future breakthrough entrepreneurs to think about this as an avenue for innovation, for future technology. How can we look at manufacturing in terms of complex manufacturing? Looking at textiles as an industry that is dying out, right? In Mexico as well. How can we reinvigorate it by bringing in some of these high value-added technical capabilities to the fibers and the textiles? So thank you very much for your attention, and I think now we have about 10 minutes for a little conversation.
That was great.
Just looking at the clock to see exactly how much time we have. So we discussed some of the questions that we both had, you know, prior to coming on stage, and certainly what I finished with, this idea of manufacturing, I think is something that is a huge challenge in this industry. So maybe would you like to share some of your experience in terms of manufacturing?
Sure. So one thing that I think was very important to us is that we had a team that actually had done manufacturing before. So they had really close ties to manufacturers across Asia and all over the world, and so they were really familiar with some of the challenges with working with manufacturers. The other thing was that it wasn't just our sort of founding team that was really familiar with these, it was our industrial design team as well. So they spent time actually going to the manufacturer before it was just handed off to them and said, okay, this is what we're thinking. Can you actually make something like this? And what are any tweaks we need to make? Or, you know, is this going to work? So I think being very honest with yourself as a company about what some of the limitations are in manufacturing from the very beginning and designing for manufacturing is really important.
Yeah. And, you know, from our perspective, definitely what I mentioned, which was the integration of textile and garment manufacturing with electronics manufacturing, was our biggest challenge, right? The shirts, in the end, you mentioned fashion and design as well, so we'll come back to that in a minute maybe. But the shirts themselves ended up being quite simple and basic, you know, without many fashion components. We focused on the functionality in terms of the compression design as well as the electronics that is embedded in the shirt itself. But there were so many really simple things that the clothing manufacturers had never heard of that we needed to teach the manufacturing team. So for example, when you have conductive threads going in a shirt, if you cut something in the wrong place, the product has to be thrown out, right? And this was some very basic, because basically you have a discontinuity in your circuit. And this was, you know, a very basic element of information that was very difficult to communicate to the people working in the factory. And we ended up working with a partner from Finland, in fact, who is developing, they have developed their own manufacturing capabilities now in China, where basically they have taken a traditional textile garment manufacturing factory and are retraining people and adding these additional machines to be able to do the sort of stuff we want to do. But basically, you know, manufacturing was the hugest stumbling block to a lot of these textile products.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just with my experience at Rock Health and talking to other entrepreneurs at various incubators and sort of seed funding organizations, I think manufacturing is definitely a challenge.
Yeah. And so I want to go back, we only have about 3.5 minutes. I want to go back to the design and fashion question that you mentioned. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so for us, I think, you know, we have a very capable and very excited technical team, but they were also very, very upfront with themselves as far as what regular people actually wanted to wear. So making something that was at a minimum super comfortable and not invasive fashion-wise was very important. And then just going a step further and actually making something beautiful enough that it became a fashion statement by itself, I think was the goal. And we're still building upon that. We're building out our Shine family with lots of different colors and different accessories.
So it's like a jewel finally, right? It's like a almost semi-precious stone that you could place in different things.
And when we talk to, especially women, we talk to a lot of women during sort of the early stages of product development, and it became very clear to us that women were not as excited to wear some of the bigger devices out there, and they weren't actually, I mean, I love wearing Shine on my wrist, but they weren't that excited to wear things on their wrist because they had a watch, or they wanted to wear bracelets, or they didn't want a tan line. So all these types of preferences of users, I think, were really important to us, just making sure that people would actually be excited to put the device on. So we thought about that a lot.
We actually started out designing for women. So our first target group was women. And the idea was, you know, most women wear a bra or a sports top anyway with an elastic. So we thought, perfect, you know, we can just put all the sensors in there. It'll be like a seamless transition in terms of a use model. But we really stumbled on the design and fashion aspect of it. You know, we did all of these alpha, beta tests with many user groups, and the way it looked was much more important. You know, unfortunately, it's a gender stereotype, right? But so we ended up just focusing on men for our first release, and women should be coming towards the end of this year. So.
Yeah, I think understanding preferences across a wide variety of consumers is really important, and just being really honest with yourself about what people like. I mean, for us, we are very, very relentless in getting user feedback and sharing it with our entire team. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. So we also talked a little bit about user experience before we came up here. So do you have any closing advice or insights to share about how you guys go about that?
Sure, yeah. So I mean, I think I kind of talked about this before, as far as like, we have a really amazing technical team. We're located in the heart of Silicon Valley, where people are obsessed with high tech. And it's great, but the truth is most people are not obsessed with tons and tons of features. They really want the core features that they're most excited about, and they want something that's easy to use and is reliable and is convenient to use. So I think for us, thinking about user experience, we really try to simplify it into the core features and core.
Mention the.
Yeah, so I'm being encouraged to do a shameless plug, so I will. But yeah, so the way Shine works basically is what we realized was that this obsession with steps that has come out in the last couple of years, it wasn't really there before. People aren't actually, you know, it's not the steps, it's really just motivating themselves to move more than they already move. So the way Shine works is you double tap it, a halo of lights shows you your progress towards your daily activity goal, which you set on the app, and then you kind of know, okay, this is how I'm doing. So it gives people a very, just the key piece of information, which is, am I moving enough? Really simply, and doesn't overcomplicate things.
Thank you, Amy. And
Thanks.
thank you, everybody, for staying with us. And I guess now we're going to move to lunch.
Thank you.